Lisa is a cut flower farmer, author, and speaker on organic cut flower gardening. She has been farming since 1998 in southeastern Virginia on the Ziegler family homestead. In season, her urban 3-acre farm produces thousands of stems of flowers and an abundance of vegetables, which she sells to florists, supermarkets, and at farmers markets, and for her members-only farm market. In recent years, she has started leading hands-on trainings, which I'm sure she'll tell us about, on the farm for flower farmers and everyday flower junkies. I guess that would make me one of those. Lisa is the author of 4 books, including Vegetables Love Flowers and the Companion Planting Guide for Beauty and Bounty. Welcome, Lisa.
Hey, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you for being here. I was sharing with you a little bit before we got started. When I went back to college in 1998, one of the things that I was doing is I was truck farming my front and backyard here at the urban farm. And I live right in the middle of Phoenix, and I have a third of an acre. So it's a teeny place, and one of the things that I farmed or grew was flowers, and, I would, maybe a third of what I was growing was cut flowers that I would take to the market, and without fail, every week, the flowers would all sell out. I'd have extra vegetables, but the flowers were always there, are always gone.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm very, very excited to jump in and hear what you have to share.
Sure, great. It's my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to it.
So let's go. Jump in.
All right. So I'm so glad that everybody's here. This is awesome to be able to reach out to so many people far and wide, and I just really want to share with you this evening the steps to becoming a flower farmer. I feel pretty passionate about this because if there is an unlikely suspect to become a flower farmer, it was me. It's like Greg was saying, I live in the middle of the city, and so I'll kind of tell you what my conditions are and how I got moving here. But this is really great, and we're so glad that so many people have joined us here this evening. So I just want to tell you just a little bit about my farm, and then we'll talk about the conditions that I grow in, so you'll kind of see where I'm coming from and how you can connect with what it is that I do. So I live in the midst of a city of 200,000 people, and I mean literally the photo that you're looking at, actually that field to the left of me is now being developed, unfortunately. And I'm getting 90 houses over there. So my urban just got all caps. So I will now be surrounded on all sides by homes. So I am the last commercial farmer in what was once a huge farming community. And that creates some challenges, but it also has a lot of really great stuff. Like my customers, I have more access to customers, and just there's a lot of good things about that. I tend to see the upside of things, and so I see all of that as a positive. My whole piece of property is a little less than 3 acres, and on that we only have in working cutting garden or working garden, not just cutting because we also do grow some vegetables, is 1.5 acres, and that's broken out into an acre garden and then 2 quarter-acre gardens. And we produce a gob of flowers on this small space, and I will tell you that we just don't even push that to the limits. We could even push it further is what I guess I'm trying to say to you. And I feel like what I farm on now, that 1.5 acre garden, is really big for what we're talking about tonight. And I'm actually, after doing this for 20 years, I'm actually kind of on the down slide, and I'm actually coming back to more from where I started, and that's getting a smaller garden, more like 0.5 acre, to actually be in production. Because what I have found, the bigger you make your garden or your farm, you typically lose efficiency because it just gets bigger. There's more to do, and you just can't get to it all. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, a small, I call it a farmette, a small urban farm. And as Greg mentioned, I'm in southeastern Virginia, and I am in winter hardiness zone for the U.S., zone 7, and one thing you must know is that I have 0 greenhouses or hoop houses. I grow everything outside in a garden or in the field. We do all of our seed starting in a big building that looks like a huge garage that has a little room tucked off on the side that has racks with grow lights on it. So a really big part of my message is you do not have to have a lot of structure to launch yourself into this potential business if your interest is there. So I grow outside. We do all of our seed starting indoors. We do not use any pesticides on our farm. I am not certified organic. We follow those practices, and we are strong believers in, creating a habitat that, that to let nature do its job. And any use of any pesticides, and that includes organic pesticides, are harmful to somebody, the good bugs and the bad bugs. So we don't use anything, and it's not necessary. And part of how I got I do want to just go back and say that photo we're looking at there, that's my little cottage house. We're looking across, if you can imagine, you're standing on the side of one of my gardens looking across many rows of beds. And our farm is so alive with pollinators and beneficial insects. You could never walk down those pathways typically like this time of the year at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's so much activity with bumblebees and, number one good bug, wasps, that so many people are afraid of. They're just such great bugs and do a lot of the work on our farm, but they're very active. So that's just a shot looking across the garden up to the house. What really got me started in the go all natural kind of I used to be a blue girl, blue water. People that use blue water know what I'm talking about. That's synthetic fertilizer in water, and that's where I started, as most of us did 20 and 30 years ago, because that's all we knew about. But I was in the golden retriever dog fancy, doing dog shows and very active in the sport of the breed, and I became really concerned about using products in my garden, and that really opened the door for me to grow all natural. And I will tell you that it led to my success. I would not be farming today if I had not taken that turn, because it is far easier and less complicated and less expensive, because, y'all, nature works when you give it a hand, and that's kind of what we do on our farm. And that's really how what has made me so successful. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm an all-natural flower farmer, plopped down in the middle of the city, doing things that people say we could never do, and there's a lot of people out there doing it now. So I'm not quite the renegade I was 10 or 15 years ago trying to do this. And so let's just talk about the flower business for just a moment. Who's growing and who's buying flowers? And I have to tell you, I do come from a large family. I'm married into a large family of big farmers, combines, thousands of acres, and they don't even understand that the flower industry is huge. Here in the U.S., that's a $7 to $9 billion a year industry, cut flowers. It's big business, and so it is definitely a very viable opportunity for folks to get in. And as many of you know, or may not know, there's a lot of great places that you can get information, but 80% of the flowers being brought that are sold in the United States are imported from other countries. And that, in fact, flipped about 20 or 30 years ago, and it used to be that the majority of our flowers were grown in our country where they were used, where there would be less footprint and better quality flowers because they aren't traveling so far. And so today, 80% of our flowers are imported, and the other 20% are grown here in country, and we're taking that back bite by bite, little bit by little bit, as more and more people see this as a viable opportunity. It's a quality of life choice, and it's really very doable. So who is buying flowers? So this is a photo looking in the back of my van. This is just a florist order, and there's a lot of different opportunities to sell flowers. I think oftentimes people, when they think cut flowers, instantly think of a farmer's market, and farmer's markets can be really good places to sell your flowers, but there are a lot of other opportunities to sell. For me, the florist business has been the key part for me. I decided early on that I wanted to sell my flowers to people that used flowers every day of their live-long life. You know what I mean? That's what their job is, too. Unlike many of the other avenues of selling flowers, it's a hit and miss. You know, does someone need flowers this week, or does an event planner have an event this week? Florists, the floral business, flower shops, sell flowers day in and day out. And this is a photo of the back of my van with a load going to a florist, and that is the real meat and potatoes of our business. And it's really a great opportunity today. Now, what's happening, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years, there's just been some really exciting things happening, connecting small growers like myself and growers that grow on even less than I grow on. I know people that grow on a quarter acre and have carved out a really great niche. But there's just a lot of new ways to connect growers with these florists and other commercial customers. Co-ops popping up. So that is just really a great way to connect. This is a load getting ready to go into the van. The volume of flowers when you connect with florists that learn to appreciate local product, it's fresher, it lasts longer, it's more fragrant, or it doesn't have a fragrance of chemicals, you really knock their socks off. And when you get a loyal following of customers in whatever avenue you're in, the volume will go up. So let's take a look here what the next one is. So here is, so for years, so I started growing in 1998. I strictly sold to florists for a couple of years. Then farmers markets hit the market, came out really big where we were in the early 2000s. And this was one of our farmers market stands. And, you know, there are some great farmers markets. What makes a farmers market great? Foot traffic, y'all. If there are not people, see how that's kind of dead? Do you see a soul in sight in that picture? I'm just sitting here realizing that was a market that we sat at for 2 years trying to help them create an opportunity, and it finally fizzled out. But a great farmers market are the most difficult ones to get in. They're the most policed for producer only. The harder they are to get in, typically, the greater your opportunity is. Because if you don't have foot traffic walking past your booth, you can't sell. But farmers markets are surely a great way to connect with people, to get your name out. There's just a lot of great opportunities there, and particularly if you live in an area that has an established farmers market. So this is, again, looking in my truck, and these are sleeved bouquets. The supermarket business is another opportunity to sell flowers. Certainly the supermarket business is something that you would jump into after you'd gained some experience, because when I say volume, I don't want anybody to think that you're too small to sell to supermarkets. When I say volume, you just need to have a certain amount of flowers each week, not necessarily as many flowers as you might consider. I was just speaking to a young lady last week who's started selling to supermarkets. She only delivers them 25 bouquets a week, but that's 25 bouquets week after week after week. So the supermarket business is a great opportunity, particularly as people are asking for local product, even from their supermarkets, whether it's vegetables or flowers. And that is we felt like we graduated from farmers markets to supermarkets. And so supermarkets are very much within the reach of even a small grower like myself. We actually sold to 2 chains, and we had 7 stores in each chain. So even with my little urban farm, we were able to pump out enough flowers. Another thing that I do that is a huge success for us is we have a members-only market, and we offer a bouquet subscription. The members-only market are people that are invited to come to our farm to pick up their flowers. They buy a membership, and their membership is just purchasing a share. Just think of a share as a gift card. And that gift card, they have to have that gift card to come here and be able to pick up flowers. People off the street just can't walk in here and pass money and purchase flowers. We've been doing that for 18 years, hugely successful. It's kind of an exclusive thing. We only have 125 members, and people are dying to get in, and they love coming to the farm. I know who's coming to the farm. It's not open to the public. It's just to the members. And we find this works really well. On average, about 20% of our membership comes each week. People are not required to come each week like a CSA, but they come when they want flowers, and there's no limit on how much they can buy. Subscriptions are just like it sounds. It's more like a CSA. People buy a number of weeks, and then you can drop them off. We really target businesses for that, but it has grown for us to include a lot of homes of people that are just not available to come to our members-only market, or they just want it for the convenience. And we have a very limited delivery area, and so that really helps you. You know, you look at where you run your errands. You don't want to spend, because you have to do this week after week, you don't want to spread yourself out too thin. So you can visit our website, in which all that information will be on the slides here, and go to the store like you want to buy one of our subscriptions or our members only, and it has all of our details there. You can read all about how that all works. And those are really, those 2 programs are really awesome because most of them are purchased in the off-season. We give bonuses, which you can read on the website about that, and that encourages people to buy them in the winter months when the farmer needs money more, because that's when you're spending all your money, right? That's when you're buying seeds and preparing. And so you can see all the details for that. So the recommended reading that I would suggest, the number 1 book, if you meet or know a flower farmer, we've all read the same book first, and it's The Flower Farmer by Lynn Basinski. And, I mean, it changed my life. I happened upon it, read it, and it really just lays out all the possibilities and overviews and just really lets you know that you can do it. Both of my books, Cool Flowers and Vegetables Love Flowers, really are applied to flower farming. I mean, the books, as I'll talk about at the end, the books are written for home gardeners because it's hard to get a publisher to publish a book strictly on flower farming because the market's not so big. But the books have that underlying vibe, so you can apply the techniques to that. And then another great book, and I did not put this on the slide, Local Color by Frank and Pamela Arnowski. You can find their book on growingformarket.com. That is a great website that any small market gardener farmer should be on. It's a newsletter, lots of resources, and it's a lot of books on there that you can't find anywhere else. And Frank and Pamela's book, they're like the rock stars of the flower farming industry, and they're just full of great information. So these are the books, The Flower Farmer, Local Color, and their first book, which is no longer in print, was We're Gonna Be Rich. It's just a great book. Every new flower they found, they always thought this is the one that's going to, buy us the big hot pie in the sky. So let's talk flower farming. Now we've looked at some ways you can sell them. You're feeling like maybe it's possible for you if you have a third of an acre, a quarter of an acre, or really even smaller than that, depending on what you're going to do. And I will tell you that the number one step to success, to getting started as a flower farmer, is to start small. There's no more empowering thing to do than to do something well when you first start out. And it's so funny, I was looking at a picture today on Instagram of a friend's beautiful farm, and I thought to myself, when I looked at those long rows of freshly planted plants, I thought, holy cow, who is hoeing all of that? That is so long. Big is not always better when you're starting out because it is so easy to get overwhelmed, and I get that. I mean, when I first started, I started out with, for the first year that I grew, I had 5 beds that were 80 feet long. And I sold some flowers, y'all. I mean, you grow intensely, and we'll talk about the soil and all that good stuff, but I grew a lot of flowers. But I was able to stay on top of harvesting, figure out maintenance, and it just made me want to do it more. So resist. And I tell you, something that's in the book, Vegetables Love Flowers, is it really teaches you how to succession plant, which is key. And starting your first garden of the season off small is the ticket to that. I would definitely say that building your soil and reducing weeds, most people think of those things as an afterthought. In my experience, that should be the number one. Right one, I guess number 2. We won't put it number 1 since I've already said that, starting small. Building your soil is the key to your success. That's the key to my success. You have to know that the place that I farm has been leaf molded for 80 years, and that's the key. So building your soil, grow in annuals, get in inexpensively, and we'll see some pictures. You got to find customers, and then you have to gain experience and wisdom. There's nothing wrong with starting small and getting smarter and doing things smarter. And don't fall into the high investment hole. That means don't start investing a lot of money in bulbs and that kind of stuff until you kind of know what you're doing. And don't let a pretty flower get in the way of the bottom line, right? Just because it's pretty doesn't mean you need to be growing it as a cut flower. And I find that to be a really big challenge for most people. So it is all about the soil. And I would encourage you to dig in deep there. That will relate to your irrigation, how abundant your plants will produce, how long your stems are. You need to spend the most of your time and resources, particularly in the beginning, on it's all about your soil. And I just can't underestimate this. I get emails every day about people suffering from puny plants. There's not enough fertilizer in the world to fix that, y'all. Fertilizer, we use organic fertilizer, but you can't make dead dirt grow great stuff easily. And so it really is all about your soil. And a big thing for us is protecting the soil. This is Babs running through. This is mid-April. Look at the height of those snapdragons. And if you'll look, what you don't see in this picture is there's not any weeds except for that one buttercup you see sticking out there. And that's because there's no soil showing. We spend all of our focus, labor, and time on setting our garden up so that we don't have any maintenance, or little maintenance, I should say, not any. And we protect our soil to keep it cool, to keep it moist, and to keep it from producing weeds. And we do a lot of that setting up in the off season. when it's cool outside, when it's great. We're not making beds and doing hard work. This is July. It's mid-90s here. We're not doing that kind of hard work this time of the year. So building and protecting the soil should be really, really at the top of your list. And depending on what your challenges are, typically it's the same fix for all of them. Tons of organic matter, compost and leaf mold, fix sandy soil, fix clay soil. So you just have to really, it's not the glamorous part of the job, right? Because everybody wants to get into growing the flowers. But I want to now for us to take a look at what would those flowers be? Low cost, in demand, annual crops. That's what we're speaking about. Annual crops give you more flowers, more bang for your buck. They bloom longer. They're less expensive. Pennies on the dollar for investment for what your income would be. And these are the top 10 crops. These are in demand, whether you're selling to florists, whether you're making bouquets for a farmer's market. And half of them are cool season: the snaps, the bells of Ireland, the stock, the larkspur, and the bupleurum. And the other half, sunflower, zinnias, coxcomb, celosia, plumes, and lemon basil, are summer. This is what we're cutting on right now, and these cool season crops we just finished up with. So I think that people tend to think and make it far more complicated than it has to be. This is where you start. These are staples of the commercial farming world, or flower people, florists. And if I just grew these 10 flowers in an abundance of different colors, that could be my farm. We have some other things that come and go amongst this, but that is the meat and potatoes of our farm. So this is a look at our garden mid-April. These are all hardy annuals, cool season. The book Cool Flowers tells you all about this concept. Many of us can plant these in the fall to winter over for the first blooms in spring. These snaps are headed up, almost ready to be harvested, and it's mid-April. We never had a cash crop that early, relying just on warm season crops. Stock. I also grow a lot of things outside in the field that people told me and still tell me that you can't do it. You have to have them in a hoop house. So we grow beautiful stock out in the field. You follow some common sense practices when you have stuff growing out in the field. If there's 3 days of rain coming, you might have to harvest off your schedule that week to get out there a little early if you've got some really open blooms or something. But we manage it beautifully, have been doing it for years. Stock is a very in-demand, very early crop. And this is that field you just saw, the snapdragons that were heading up. And we do use row cover, and we do that to protect from deer and wind. These are all winter hardy in my zone, which my book Cool Flowers tells you how to figure all that out. But the covers are down, and this is probably, I would guess this is February. Looking at the way things are, there's no leaves on the trees. And so we go into the season with established plants ready to start producing, and this is larkspur, which is a great, beautiful, easy to start from seed, easy. Snapdragons are a huge crop for florists and for making bouquets, and we grow several different varieties, and so they bloom at different times. This is rocket that we're looking at there. White flowers are always in season. And here is that cool season garden again, on the verge of bust. So this is us at Mother's Day. And if you're a gardener or doing a little farming, think what is blooming in your garden for Mother's Day. This is Queen Anne's lace, yarrow. This is a bunch of rudbeckias. They're all on the verge of busting loose. And look at those bells of Ireland, most coveted flower that people want to grow. Great crop for late spring. Again, these are all the cool season. This is bupleurum, and bupleurum is a huge commercial crop. All of these are easy to grow from inexpensive seed and ready to roll. So while that's all going on, this is what's happening on the other side of the garden. These are the things that were being planted as soon as it was warm enough. Zinnias and coxcomb, all those things we saw on the list. And you see that in between our pathways there, we mow the grass, and here is that garden in bloom. Narrow pathways, lots of warm season annuals that we just harvest over and over and sell them commercially, as well as it's great bouquet material. So this is a classic summer harvest. This is sitting downstairs in my building right now. Classic. Zinnias, believe it or not, is one of the number one cash crops for us. For florists, they drop their Gerber daisies as soon as the zinnias come in. So this is a beautiful, we have coxcomb and plumes and just a great mix of annuals. We use basil as our fragrant filler. We grow several different types, but the green in the long picture is Miss Burns lemon, and by far the lemon basil knocks people's socks off. And I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but these are all pretty easy to grow, y'all. There's no fussing involved. Coxcomb is an enormous crop for us. Supermarkets, we never grew enough. I just don't know what they did with it all, but coxcomb is an easy grower if you live particularly in the southern, in where you have hot, humid summers. And it's just a really beautiful, great crop to grow. And look at, these are more celoseas in the family of coxcomb. And these are all grown from seed very easily. We have Lysianthus. These are all doable outside in a small garden. Look at that coxcomb. Just absolutely beautiful. So we, in high production years, we grew 1,200 sunflowers a week because that is a great way to float a bouquet business. You can always add one or two more sunflowers if you're running short of flowers. So this is half of 1 week's production going into the building to be made into bouquets. And look at, these are plumes. Celosia plumes are in the top 5 sellers for us in cash crop. This is Sunday Series Orange, one of our very, very favorites. And look at the height of that Lysianthus grown in the field. Don't be afraid to try Lysianthus in the field. And this is not a seed. This is a tuberose. Singles, super productive, very in demand, very easy to grow. We have not lost them to rodents, and they just do an absolutely great. People love them because they're fragrant. They smell like a gardenia. This is Gumpacarpus physocarpus, or as we call it in the floral trade, hairy balls or monkey balls, and number one fall crop that we grow. This is a warm season. It's a tropical butterfly weed, and people love, these are the seed pods. And it is a great cut flower, and again, super easy to grow. And we do grow some dahlias. Dahlias are a great cash crop in the fall. And again, they can be simple to grow if you stick with the right varieties for cut flowers, which are not the huge ones. They're more the size of the palm of your hand or a little bit bigger. That's a great opportunity and a great niche for a local market because they don't ship well, as most of these flowers. This is classic fall flowers here, y'all. Very simple. Sunflowers, tuberoses, and some salvia. The lifeline of your garden is keeping it cut. People classically overplant, can't get it all cut, and then wonder why they have all of a sudden no flowers to cut anymore because they're running around hitting and missing. And you have to be able to cut everything that you plant if you want to keep a production garden because it's really the lifeline of the garden. And if you can't cut it all, then you either need to get help or you need to just ditch part of your garden to maintain the part that you can because it's very discouraging to have that happen. We set up for low maintenance. You can see here there's not a place for a weed to sprout. That black film you see is biodegradable film. We do not use plastic, and it's totally turned into the soil at the end of the season. But as you can see, we have no soil showing. Sowing seeds in the garden, our fall planted stuff is a lot of it. Typically we do that, and we use a hoe to run through the soil. Notice that my beds, the rows are a little further apart than normal, than our transplants would be, which gives me room to run this hoe easily and quickly down to take out all the small weeds that are developing there over winter. Chickweed and all those types of cool season weeds, we eliminate them when they're small, so we never come out to have a bed overrun. This is fall. You can see my red maple tree in the background. So this was all a garden that was sown by seed directly in the garden, hoed weekly until we went into winter and got some mulch down, and this was a big part of our cash crop. We just turned this garden under, actually. That produced for us April, May, and June. It's just huge. These are the bells of Ireland. There is netting here, but it's green, so you can't really see it. And the coolness of spring is when these flowers really come into their own, and learning about hardy annuals and when you plant them will be a big boon to your business or to starting a business, because people want more flowers in the spring and the fall than they do any other time. And again, there's nowhere for a weed to sprout there, right? And that's the key. That's about, we collect our bags of leaves in the city. We just dump them. We don't mulch them. And so there's no place for a weed to sprout, right? This is a summer garden. The stakes are not installed yet for the netting. But you can see that we're able to spend all of our time cutting because we're not having to worry much about weeds, because there's nowhere for them to really sprout. And that's about 10 inches deep of leaves, too, by the way. We do use low tunnels on our farm. They are very simple and easy and inexpensive to put up. Just wire and Ag-19, and it protects from pests, deer, wind. You can harden off underneath of them. Really so many uses for low tunnels, and it's, as I mentioned, very inexpensive, so it's a great way for a new grower to get in and provide some protection and extend a season or protect from pests. When I first got started, this was me. I used a Troy-built tiller for the first 12 years of my growing. I didn't get a tractor until 12 years in. So don't be discouraged. You don't have to have a tractor. And you don't even have to, there's no-till methods now. There's lots of different opportunities for you to do it. Me and those two ladies, these are 120-foot beds, and we handmade all of those beds with a tiller, laying that black film, and as you can see, we're ready for planting over to the right. You can see that the beds are made, the pathways are mulched, so we set the garden up for no maintenance. And how do we start the seeds? And I'm just going to, I know that some of you may have heard of soil blocking. That's the way that we start seeds. It's the English have done it for decades. And that's 3-week-old basil in my hand, and that's 20 plants. I learned about it 20 years ago, and it's what made it possible for me to farm, because it was very easy for me to tweak this method into a tabletop seed starting method, meaning you can do it inside of a building with no water running everywhere. You can do it in trays with no drainage holes. And so you can see we use, for small crops, not needing many plants, we use these white trays. But on a commercial level, once you get bigger, we use cafeteria trays. And that's 40 plants on that little 5x7 tray. That's 9-day-old kale. So soil blocking is an incredible way to start seeds. This is stock that was just born. This is a cafeteria tray and 240 of those little mini blocks. The mini blocks are how we start 99% of all of our seeds, not the larger blocker, but actually the small blocker, and they just grow tremendously. And we even use the small blocker for zinnias. Yes, commercial growers always choose to start seeds indoors when given a chance. And this is some just born seedlings you can see, and they grow in that little block till they go to the garden, typically from 2 to 4 weeks old, depending on how long it takes you to get them there. This is some perfect size coxcomb ready to go to the garden. Those are about 4.5 inches tall. You can see that's 240 of them on a serving tray, which would be the size of a cafeteria tray. And they are beautiful and healthy, and they hit the ground running. They suffer no transplant shock. We can grow many of them in a small space. It's really made me possible. Looky here, this is the stainless steel racks that we use. I do use shop lights and grow lights. There's pros and cons for each, and these are all plants are about ready to go out to the garden. And so you can see this is an indoor room, and it's just you don't have to have a high-tech system. You can start small and really tackle what you have to do to get started, which is to start small, grow inexpensively, start from seed. And I will tell you that I feel like social media has led so many people down a rabbit hole that they never come out of, showing all of these luscious, beautiful flowers that are grown from bulbs. And people, they're high investment, investing, still not even kind of really capturing how to grow yet. And then all of a sudden you're so displeased with yourself because you kind of didn't have success, and then you didn't have them sold. And so I just want to say to you, starting small and growing inexpensively. All those flowers we just looked at are all started from seed. And then you have to get out there and find customers. And once you figure out what your market is, then you go to town. And as you're doing all those things, you're really gaining experience. And that experience will help you to grow your business bigger if you want to, but you don't even have to, right? So, I'm talking about social media, and looky there, there's our Facebook page, and I will tell you that you can learn how to farm now. A lot. You can learn a lot from just visiting other people's Facebook pages and following them and watching on Instagram and investigating, but don't fall into that rabbit hole of that you have to invest a lot of money up front